So in this analysis video, we're going to take a look at the driver swing of Charles Howell III. So in the first video, I did an analysis of his iron play and how geometry can really help make you a really good iron player. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the dynamics of his swing. And specifically, I'm going to share a little story about his fitness program and how that, how he trains his body can influence how well he's hitting his driver. Okay, so if we start the swing analysis the same way, if we look at the driver swing, we can see that he's got some pretty good TrackMan numbers, right? Overall, pretty neutral path, slightly closed, so he's going to get a nice little draw, hitting slightly up on the ball. This is something that he and his coach have worked on the ability to do that's helped him a lot. Really solid numbers. So the question is, okay, he's got really good path numbers. Why would someone like Charles Howell tend to get some open club face issues? Because he'll tell you that his main miss is when he hits the ball off to the right. So I'm going to talk to you about what's going on in his swing that might contribute to that and how it might relate to your game if you struggle with either your driver or your iron play. Okay, so if we look at this position, shaft is pretty vertical. So even though he has lean or lag compared to his body, similar to what he had with the iron, because his upper body is so much more behind the golf ball, the shaft is pretty vertical. That's one of the aspects that helps with that positive angle of attack. He's from the down the line, we saw that the club path was pretty neutral. If we're looking at some of these checkpoints as far as where the club is kind of passing compared to the hands, you can see two little checkpoints as far as where is the club in the follow through when it kind of passes through the hands. The more that it passes on this side of the hands, the more it's going to be in to out, and the more that it passes on this side of the hands, the more it's going to be out to in. So a lot of you golfers who slice the ball, you'll have the club kind of follow a path from impact where it'll go a little bit more low, kind of like this. So anyway, he's got pretty good path numbers from these two, which you can kind of see a little bit from the two checkpoints. Seeing that wrist go into extension there in the downswing is often hard to see. So here is a 3D wrist graph looking at flexion extension. So this is an older swing of Charles. He's actually worked on this and definitely gotten better at it. So you can see that he starts with the wrist in about 35 degrees of extension, and then during the backswing, as he gets towards the top of the swing, it's pretty close to flat. But you can see right through here is he's starting to go towards extension until about delivery position, say midway in the downswing, and then from there, when it goes positive like this, that's when he's flexing that wrist. So we can see right around here is where that little trough or that maximum extension in the downswing would be, and then from here down to where right around this frame here, he would be flexing the wrist and then lose a little bit as he goes through impact. But what can happen is when you're opening that club face by extending the wrist early in transition, it adds a little bit of timing that you're trying to do when the club is moving really fast. The metaphor that I use is imagine we were playing badminton, and the rule was I was giving you heavier and heavier badminton rackets. So at first, with the badminton racket really light, you can be totally out of position and just flick your wrist and square the club face up. But if I gave you a badminton racket that weighed 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 10 pounds, the heavier it got, the more that you would have to be in position earlier in order to line everything up, because you couldn't rely on just changing it accurately last minute. Well, when it comes to the driver is a longer club and we swing it faster, it's got more inertia. Essentially, down at the bottom, it's like a heavier racket, and it becomes harder to then time up squaring the club face late. So a lot of the really accurate and really consistent drivers of the golf ball tend to square it up early. Now, I promised I'd talk to you a little bit about his power sources and how they relate. Charles has a tendency to pull down with the arms, especially the lats. So I'll share a quick story from a tournament that I went to with him, where they were on the range. At this time, he was working with Grant Waite, and they were swinging really well. Had a, just hitting lots of nice little draws. And I walked over to him because I kind of had this idea about his over dominance with his lats, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I mess you up a little bit? Do a little experiment." He kind of laughed at me, saying, like, "You can't mess me up," but lo and behold, I had him drop the club and get into like a lat pull down position. So he's kind of like this, and I went and put my arms underneath him to apply a little bit of resistance. And I just had him pull down kind of, a little aggressively, just to activate the lat. So I had him pull down for about 10 seconds. After that, he proceeded to hit the next 4 balls about 40 or 50 yards right. So basically all I did was I activated his power source, so that he was using more of his lats to pull the club down. And when he was using more of his lats in transition, he tended to open the face a little bit more and flare it off to the right. Now, he's kind of a experimenter or tinkerer by nature, so when he went home a few weeks later, he tested it out himself. He normally works out and then goes to the range. So during his workout, one day, he did a lot of TRX rows and lat pull type exercises, and he said that he hit the ball really terribly. He felt like he was kind of stuck all day. And then later in that week, he did the program that we designed. So he did a lot more mobility work and a lot more stability work, some end range strength, but most of the heavier lifting was for his core and his legs. And that day he hit the ball great. So part of the equation when you're looking at the driver or the longer club swing is matching up how you power the swing with how you control the club face. And what can happen is if you are too upper body dominant, that can tend to cause club face control issues with the driver, and you typically wouldn't see the same level of control issue with the iron. So if you want to be really good and consistent with the driver, we want to get more of the speed being created from your legs and your core and less from your arms and shoulders. If you're looking for clues with your power source, sometimes it's activities away from golf that can help. So here's Charles doing an exercise in his gym where he's got a swing fan and he's just kind of working on some backswing positions. And you'll notice if we look at his foot, you'll see that he has a tendency to get a little bit further down into the downswing before he gets into that heel. So you'll see that this right here, if we kind of scrub back and forth, is a little bit more of the upper body leading the core as opposed to the lower body leading the core. So this is an area where doing things like step drills and sequence drills helps to get the lower body involved earlier, and that can also oftentimes kind of down-regulate or depower the upper body. That improves your sequencing, allowing a little bit better face control, ultimately creating a little bit better situation for the driver. Oftentimes, golfers with more of an upper body pull will complain of 2 situations that cause them to hit the ball or to lose face control. And both of those situations are when the power source gets exaggerated. So one is when they're trying to swing hard. So if you have a tendency to swing more with your arms and your upper body, I'd advocate working on your rhythm and working on making sure that you resist the temptation to swing hard. The second thing is when you get extremely nervous. When your body gets stressed, you're going to tend to exaggerate or amplify your power sources. So if you have more of a pulling or arm dominant power source, working on managing your emotions and breathing exercises and things like that might be helpful as well. But long term, if you want to improve your driver sequence, I'd highly recommend getting your lower body a little bit more involved earlier and relying less on your arm pull for your power source. So this video is a little different than my typical analysis videos. Typically with the analysis videos, I want to just share what golfers do really well, but I've got some inside experience from working with Charles personally, and so I thought it'd be fun to kind of share how I approach things a little bit more on the coaching side. If you like the way we break it down and get into the details of what separates good driver versus iron, then please click the link in the description below, head over to golfsmartacademy.com, sign up for a free trial membership. Yes, we mean free. You don't even have to put in a credit card or anything. There you'll have access to all the videos where you can learn to diagnose and train what's going wrong with your driver or your irons or wedge and even putting. Golf Smart Academy is designed to be the ultimate resource for do-it-yourself golfers just like you.